this one, a proper tank at last. This one, you may recognise this if you've all seen your war movies. This is the one we lent to the Fury movie with, I don't think he's there today, but Brad Pitt in the top in the film, but Buzz, who's driving it, he was actually on the set for about 6 months. And it's that famous American tank from the war years, the American Sherman M4 tank. The Americans, again, as I mentioned, beginning of the war, they know they're going to get involved. They don't actually come into the fight till December of 1941. They are already working. They send engineers to Britain. They look at what seems to be going on in Europe in the way tanks are fighting. They come up with British and French help, the very first tank, the M3 Grant tank. You can see that in the museum. But this is the tank they really want to build. It's called the M4, model number 4 in their production line, and it's Britain that calls it the Sherman. They name it's Winston Churchill, he's fed up with all these abbreviations, name them after American generals. So we have General Sherman, General Grant, we have a General Jeb Stuart, so they've got a light tank called the Stuart tank. So when the round's fired, it's got more kinetic energy, it will penetrate more enemy armour. That's the idea for the bigger gun here. And so you've got a loader in that turret and you've got a gunner. He's the one who's actually aiming that gun. He's actually got a foot pedal. When he's on target, he presses on the pedal and that fires that 76mm gun. And in the front of the vehicle, 2 more crew members, driver and a bow machine gunner, sometimes called the co-driver's position. He's quite often operating the radios in American tanks as well. So 5 guys inside that space, the engine's in the back, and one of the problems the Americans have, they build huge new factories, they get the automobile industry involved, big production is going off straight away for the Americans, but they can't build enough of the same engine that they want to put in the original M4 Sherman tank. So all the variations, why you see all this M4, E8, etc., they're really the difference in the engines used. And this particular Sherman, in the back of it, is actually a twin diesel engine made by General Motors as opposed to a radial engine that was in a lot of them. So this particular tank, later in the war, thicker tracks, they're always developing, they're always improving on the production of the tanks, bigger gun, thicker armour on the front, and that's really the story of the Second World War. If you look inside the museum, you'll see the tanks that it fought against, Panzer IVs, Sturmgeschützes, the famous Panther and Tiger. They quite often are compared one against one as being better than the American Sherman or some of the British tanks. The key thing to remember in World War II is about numbers count. So the Americans made over 54,000 Sherman tanks in World War II. And if we look at that famous Tiger, we've got the Tiger 1, that was in that Fury movie as well, that still runs every now and again. 1,300 Tigers made. So not that many when you're comparing them. Same as on the Russian front, the Russians make huge numbers, about 60, 70,000 we think, of the T-34. Again, not the best tanks if you're playing top trumps, but there's a lot of them and they will swamp the enemy, and that's pretty much what tank warfare was like for the Allies in World War II. Train your men well, get better tactics. Your tank might not be that much worse than the enemy's, but it's quite often not better, so work out how you're going to defeat them. That's what was going on at the time. Now this one, as I mentioned, this is a late war Sherman. They carried on using them after the war, lots of countries had them. This one, we think, originally went to the Canadian Army before it came down to the Tank Museum some years ago. It's been driving here for many years, and that's, again, testament to its reliability. Another one of those great features the Americans were able to do with their vehicles, keep them on the road, keep them going, and from that point of view as well, the British soldiers loved the Sherman. Because again, it meant you could have a night's sleep. If you're a tank crewman, you don't have to spend the entire night trying to keep the blooming thing going for the next day, doing work and repairs on it. So again, different countries come up with different ways they're going to fight their wars. You look at the moment what's going on in the Ukraine, some very sophisticated Russian tanks, terribly used by their crews, who evidently are very badly trained and do not know what they are doing at the moment. That's the bald truth of it. What's going on there at this particular time. Those tanks would perhaps be much more effectively used by another army who use them in combined arms, is a phrase used. Sherman tanks on their own in World War II, useless. You have to get on with the infantry, work out how you're fighting together, protecting each other. Logistics, again, the Russians' logistics gone out the window. There is no point having a tank like this if you can't get the ammunition to it and the fuel to keep it going. And again, the Allies in World War II got brilliant with their logistics. Keeping armies going in the field is really, really important. And that's one of the things we're seeing at the moment. You're seeing on the news every day, we're seeing a situation where those clever bits of kit are just not being used to their full potential. Now the engine of the Sherman is in the back and it's actually taking power all the way through the middle of the vehicle to a gearbox that's right at the front.